Hey, it's Zim, and should you play Trials of Fire? This game is on sale for $19.99 on Steam, and came out in about April of this year out of early access, and I just started playing it probably about a week ago, and man, this game really blew me away. I was kind of expecting a kind of generic roguelite tactical battler, and while there is definitely tactical battles, it's done very well and interesting, but it's very story-driven, which I like. It also offers a lot of features that I didn't expect, that I really enjoy. So we're going to go ahead and jump into a game and kind of show it off, but I definitely think it's worth checking out if you're interested in more of a tactical battle side of like a deck builder. So we're going to head and choose an adventure. Now you're presented with 3 characters. When you start this game, you'll only have the warrior, hunter, and elementalist available to you. However, as you play the game and do different things, you'll be able to unlock different heroes. As you hover over them, you can see if I complete 3 different adventures, I'll unlock this hero. 5 total side quests, so on and so forth. Each of these heroes so far play pretty differently. They offer different mechanics. I find that most of the mechanics are pretty interesting. And as we can see here, each of these characters are going to have their own equipment. Now, equipment's interesting because you get to change their deck based on their equipment. So in this deck builder, tactical battler type of game, these decks all are set to these 9 cards, each kind of unique to the hero. And then whenever they level up, you actually get to add cards to the deck, but what you're doing is replacing a card as well. So you're never really increasing your deck size except for with equipment, which is a really interesting thing. Or you can upgrade these cards instead of replacing one of them. Now, if we look at quests here, there are multiple quests. You have the Trial of Fire, which is custom quest, highly replayable. I find that, as we can see, the difficulty here, I just have it set to medium. I find the difficulty mostly is pretty easy on medium, except for the last boss seems to be kind of a power spike. I will say that because the bosses are random, your last boss might be different from another one. So, like, I played a couple games. In the first game, I got completely stomped by the last boss. And then my second game, I completely stomped a very different last boss, just because my characters were better against that. It's kind of always a rogue-lite issue of, like, if your build is susceptible to something or stronger against something, you're either going to fail or succeed based on those. But you also have lore quests down here. These are each going to be different, plus daily challenges, combat runs, seasonal. So all really cool. And as you can see, you can also have what's a rival, which is where you stand among everyone else who's played this game, which is pretty awesome. And you can look at number 1 person and how well they did. Well, let's go ahead and jump into this campaign. So one of my other big complaints is I wish this game was voice acted. I think this game would do very well if it had some voiceover, even if it was just for the initial entry to the quests. I wish that there was some voiceover done, but once again, it's an indie studio, so you can't really expect that type of polish. Just something that would have been nice. And here we are. So this is an open world map, and we are trying to follow this quest. The main direction is where this golden arrow is pointing, but you'll see these blue question marks on the map. Those are certain encounters that are going to either be story-driven or another combat, or you might find equipment, or you might be presented with options. They're all very interesting. You also notice at the top here, determined and fresh. So determined is your will to continue questing, and as that drops, you're going to have more of a difficulty progressing against fights. And then fresh is how fresh you are, right? So increases health and stamina, but as that drops, you'll actually get negative cards added to your deck, so you'll want to rest. So what happens when you rest? Well, depending on where you rest, you'll regain so much of that bar back. So you want to rest in towns or in ruins, because they offer the most comfort and cover, essentially. Then you also spend 1 food every time you rest. So if you run out of food, you can't really rest. So that's also something to keep in mind. There's kind of a resource survival management, but it never feels cumbersome. It feels very interesting, which I like. But as we can see, we want to head towards this quest marker. So we'll start walking. And what's cool is, like, it's still in a storybook format. I really like the game design for this. You are clearly, like, walking on these, like, deserted lands, but, like, you never leave the page, which is really awesome. So here we have an event. In this case, we see a card up ahead with a large covered section. We make out a lone ratling in a suit of loose-fitted armor perched on the top step of the cart, who looks like he's supposed to be guarding it. And you'll notice anything in blue dialogue, you can actually hover over, and it's got all this incredible detail. It really helps add to, like, developing the world, and also, like, that D&D adventure feel. Something that I really enjoy, and, like, I played a lot of, like, D&D-esque style games where they don't have this really awesome detail, and so I think this just makes it go a little bit above and beyond a lot of its competitors. But as we can see, we can sneak around front and see if we can enter another way, which has a chance to do 50% health damage or 50% reward. We can send Vela in to creep. Reward, but could be injured. Or we could leave the rattling be. Now, you'll notice Vela's called out specifically here. So each character, and based on the class that they represent, might actually have more options or add more options to these story events. Something that's cool and neat. Just a neat feature to have. So we'll go ahead and send him around. So in this case, Vela has been injured. It's a bummer. So we now have broken arm in our deck. So on draw, we become weakened until the end of the turn. Play this card to remove it from battle. But we still get our rewards. So coins are used to trade in villages, or sometimes you can actually bribe your way out through certain encounters. We have Sturdy Bones and a Shaman Rod. Shaman Rod is unfortunate because we already have the Shaman Rod equipped. So it's just an extra one. And then Sturdy Bones is crafting material. Now, I will say that, like, most of the time I feel like I've not used crafting materials. It's very rare when I get a chance to upgrade. Because of, like, the requirements, sometimes you just don't see what you need. But we're going to go ahead and keep heading towards this quest. And as we can see, our fresh is slowly going away, so we might want to start considering resting somewhere. I will say that there is sometimes, like, hard to see where you're clicking. Like, I meant to go into the ruins and I stepped one tile above it and then had to move back. That's a slight annoyance I have with this game, but otherwise I feel like it's very responsive to where you're clicking. Alright, so peering into the collapsed Dwarven building, and once again we can hover over Dwarven, and in this case we get actually less detail, but it's because they've not been around for so long that there isn't much detail to have, right? So once again, just cool little world building. And then we can either help someone or leave them to their fate. Now, notice leave them to fate has no reward. It'd just be leaving away without interacting with this. But let's go ahead and try. Vela's been injured again. Vela's not doing well. However, also gained a positive trait. Now, these traits are seemingly random based on, like, how often people are interacting with these random events and then what they're doing in these random events. So because we are being selfless and helping, we get to gain this additional trait. However, we are now tired, so it adds 1 fatigue card to each hero's deck. So instead, we might want to rest in this town. And we gained a weakness this time. Man, this is not a great run for me. But since we want to rest here, we'll go ahead and click the stamina. So this is where you'd upgrade your items. Like I said, I just find it's pretty tough to upgrade because oftentimes you'll get random materials and then you'll find that you're just usually short one of some random material that you've never seen yet. Not a big deal, honestly, but just something I have noticed. And as we can see, there are also wandering groups of enemies. Sometimes they are just going to spawn essentially a random encounter, kind of like these blue question marks. Other times they'll immediately initiate a fight. It really just kind of depends on the enemy type and who you might have with you. So in this case, this is an immediate fight. We don't get any other options, which is great because I want to show you the combat. So as you can see, we're on these tokens here, and it's just showing me that I've luckily drawn that broken arm. And this is the combat. So you have what's called the Recycle Shrine, but it also is where it'll show you moves. Now, I can't do anything with anyone until we start generating will. How do we generate will? Well, we just have to throw away cards like this broken arm. So now we have one will, which can be used for anyone's card, or I can use it to either move him, or it gives him bonus armor at the end of the turn if I don't use it. Now, this case, we could draw extra cards, but they're not really close enough for me to worry about that. Now, you also notice these cards, there are some cards that don't cost anything. That'd be in the upper right-hand corner is their cost, and in this case, it just moves the character and would also gain me willpower, which is pretty nice. We got this Unstable Blast, which is a magic attack 3. So, and then in the bottom of the card, it shows how it's going to strike. So in this case, 3 straight ahead from us. And you can always hover over that and cancel out if you need to, if you're trying to line up certain things. And in this case, yeah, why not? And I don't think we want selfless, so we'll do another strike there. And then see, we can move them, but that burns the will that we generate. And then if we want, we can burn it and see it has a +2, so what will happen is I'll gain armor because I'm not going to use this will. Now, your enemies also use the will and card system, so keep that in mind. And then certain enemies, like bosses, will actually have innate special powers, while you have certain powers that you can put on your characters as well. So the warrior starts with taunt once per turn after you play a card. Adjacent heroes gain defend 2, right? We have the elementalist. The first card you play each turn costs -1 willpower. So all of that kind of adds in, but you also have cards, power cards in your deck, which you can play on heroes. Now what happens with these is in the left-hand top corner there, with that 4, is once you play that on a hero, that sticks around forever until they take 4 damage, and then that card will get discarded off of them. So it's a cool thing of like pressing the advantage if you think you can keep that character from taking too much damage. So in this case, these preparers would gain us a willpower at the start of our turn. However, I could just discard it immediately for 1 willpower right now. So do I think I'm going to be able to maintain them having prepare up for a long amount of time? No, with my mage, probably. It's usually a safe bet. And so that's going to be your combat for essentially everything. Now I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead from here to the end of combat. But all combats end once one party is defeated or the other. If you're defeated, you obviously lose and your run is over. And then if you defeat the enemy, your run continues. But I'll go ahead and move us to the end of this fight. Oh, and one more thing I didn't mention before, but if you are flanking with characters, which means you have 2-on-1 against a certain character, and this works for enemies as well, so you have to be careful. And this is where kind of the tactical battler comes in as well, is when they attack, the ally will also attack for base damage as well. So in this case, we'll double strike this character here, and it's highlighting my sorcerer underneath it. And what's going to happen is it's going to combo strike. And that's every time that they attack, too, which is really nice. Really cool ability. Alrighty, and that will end our combat here. And as you can see, we have now leveled up. Now, it shows that all 3 can be leveled up, and that's true. However, they all kind of share a similar XP bar, and so you only get to choose one in this case. As you beat bosses, it might give you 2 or 3. Now notice also, once you choose the level up a character, you can't level them up again until you level up the rest of your party as well. So if we want to level up him, for example, we can now choose a card to replace in our deck, or we can upgrade one of these cards as well. I think we'll take Revulsion here. And in this case now I've got to choose what card I want to replace. Then after that we get our battle rewards. We got a novice tome here. So then if we want, we can equip it to certain people. And as we can see, it'll actually add new cards to our deck. So we have 9 set cards, which we can also then replace as we level up, but they will never add to our deck. However, equipment will, and removing equipment will also. So we have Call Lightning here, but maybe I prefer to have Flame Fan. And so if I wanted, I could actually give him that staff instead, which would add Flame Fan and get rid of Call Lightning. So really cool feature. I actually really like how they did the equipment and how it adjusts your deck and makes really every game very different based on the equipment you're coming, especially when you come across that legendary equipment. It really makes finding loot in this game a lot of fun, even though it's temporary. Something that some roguelikes just kind of suffer with when they do equipment based. Now, as we are right next to a quest marker, that usually means there's going to be a boss fight here. Now, we're pretty close to being tired, and so it might be worth it to come to one of these villages instead and rest up first. And in this case, we can just buy some gear or food. All very useful with the obsidian we've been getting. And we can also sell the shaman rod if we don't want it, which you probably don't. I think I'll buy some food. This is where you can also get extra crafting gear, but once again, I don't know if it's ever worth trying to buy crafting gear because like food can be so important. You don't want to waste your money on things that aren't maybe survival based. I mean, it's kind of a different pressure system, right? So like you can definitely try it and hope it comes out in your favor, but then you might end up finding that you've hurt yourself by not being able to buy additional food or what have you. Very interesting system. We're going to add rest here, though, and then head towards our quest marker. The game's writing is definitely something I also really like. I definitely had a bad taste from Quantum Protocol's writing, which was not as great as I'd like it to be. In this case, for a D&D style game like this, writing is very important, and so I find that the writing is very well done here. I don't feel like it's necessarily the most unique thing. It's definitely very, very themed towards the D&D fantasy world that it's built, but it does it very well. And we'll jump into this boss battle here. We are going against the Devil Moth. And starting with a broken arm again. Ooh, and fire lung. There's one other thing I didn't mention in the last combat, and that is once per your round, you can undo an action. So let's go ahead and say we want to get rid of this broken arm, and this fire lung, and this wild swing. And I want to move this character up. Oh, wait, I didn't want to do that. Up on the recycle shrine, there's that little kind of rewind button. Like I said, once per round, you can do that, and what will happen is it'll undo everything that you've done. So, it gave us our cards back and moved us back. However, also note that if you take an action between that, like, it will only go back for one action, essentially. So in this case, since we just discarded cards and then moved, that's really one action. But if I discarded cards, attacked, discard a card, attacked again, and I wanted to reverse, it would only reverse that last attack. But this still seems like the better choice to do. And, oh yeah, one more thing left in combat is all characters can hold onto one card between rounds. You don't have to use your entire cards with fear that you're going to use them like other deck builder roguelikes. In this case, you can actually just save them if you want. So in this case, we might get rid of those. And then we'll hold on to the cards we want. So now we have an extra card for the round. You'll also notice that bosses like the Devil Moth automatically start with an ability. These abilities are like your hero powers. They can't be lost from taking too much damage, unlike normal powers. So in this case, at the start of the turn, they create a free fly card in hand, which just allows them to move more freely on the board. And lastly for combat, man, I keep missing out. There's a lot to combat in this game, which is why I keep coming back with these things that you don't think about until you need to use them. Which is, in this case, my warrior didn't draw any attacks, which is a real bummer, right? However, we can recycle them, and then we can click on our warrior to redraw. Now, the number here means how many cards you can redraw, so how many times you can redraw. But also when you redraw, you lose the willpower that you would have recycled from those cards. So just something to keep in mind as well. But it allows you to cycle your hand if you just get really bad draws, unfortunately. Now, as we see, the boss has just killed my sorceress. Now, what does that mean? Well, if I were to lose this fight, I'm dead, right? However, if I survive this fight, which is highly likely, she's not dead. However, we don't have her in this fight, which means we're also missing a decent amount of damage and willpower. But you do generate willpower for every hero down, so it's not a total loss either. And there we go, we've beaten the boss. And so what happens is they take an injury card. These injuries, once again, are permanent unless you can get a healing by Mystic Herbs, or as it says, by completing a main objective. Now, because we got this during a main objective, what will happen is we have to complete the next main objective before that wound will heal. But it's kind of nice because it shows that like things heal in time. As we can see, we have 3 level ups, but because we already leveled up our character once, we have to level up the other 2 first. And there, now we get a choice of all 3 again. And then whether or not we want to upgrade a card, or if we want to just replace one of our cards in our deck. In this case, we'll upgrade. Then once again, more story. And once again, I wish these main quests would have been voice acted. It would have been a nice touch, but can't have everything we want. And actually, it looks like it is going to recover her. That's a shock. I didn't realize that it would recover you on the same main objective you did. So that's something to keep in mind too, that if you're going to take an injury, it's okay on a main fight. I don't know if I agree with that. Maybe that might be something that changes in the higher difficulties. I'm hoping that's the case anyway. But we're going to go ahead and take all of this, and then we're going to gear up. Now, this legendary item is kind of a mixed bag, because you get to choose what you want it to be. Now, this is always random, but I think it does try to lean into what characters you have. So if you have a ton of warriors, it's going to not offer you a ton of books. And it's going to show you some really cool cards it's going to add to their deck. Legendary items are always worth it, and then the Soul Gem is only worth it if you're trying to upgrade a legendary item. And seeing as we have 2 casters, we might want to give that to our warrior. So it'll add those cards in. We also have some pretty new helms here. And it'll show you which character can wield these helms too. So in this case, only our warrior can, so a bummer for our mages here. And that is the game. You'll keep doing this until you either die or you complete all 3 steps of this quest. Each major quest line is going to be different, but the Trial of Fire, while everything else is randomly generated, the 3 steps or the 3 main leads of the quest are always the same. You'll fight 3 bosses, as denoted up on the journal over here. We've completed 1 step. The next step is where we're going, and then the final step, or the final boss, essentially. So, Trials of Fire. This game really took me by surprise. I didn't have much expectation for it. I thought maybe the combat would be kind of bland or boring, but honestly, I really enjoy it. It's a ton of fun. It's got a lot of this D&D RPG themes and thematics, and it's well written. It makes you excited for gearing up your characters. You can name your characters, which just kind of adds to that theme, which is nice. Though, honestly, I tend not to. I just don't feel like it's that important to me. It's nice that you can also get different characters and switch them out. There's tons of variability based on the heroes I've seen so far, which is about half of them. And the quests are really interesting as well, which I think is super interesting, that you have more than just the basic roguelite and then daily challenges. You actually have a decent amount. And what's nice is also it'll tell you how long. So this one's saying 180 to 240 minutes. I also find this game is very easy to jump in and out of and remember kind of what you're doing. It's very easy to refresh yourself on things. So, should you play Trials of Fire? I think yes. I think it's definitely worth picking up if you're interested at all in deck builders or roguelites or tactical combat. Even if you're really interested in like D&D RPG games, like this one is very, very well written and probably something that you'd really enjoy. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you've checked out Trials of Fire before, what you think of it, or if you're planning to. Also, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I'll talk to you guys later.